What's going on team, Killchain here, and just like the other arms video, we're going to be checking out the protection warrior today. So I want to have a look at the emerging builds, how it sits compared to other tanks, that kind of stuff. And keep in mind, we're very much set in how the design philosophies and what the trees are going to look like and how it's going to play. And then Tuny might have some impacts further down the lines, but in terms of the builds themselves, they're going to be pretty much all set in stone at this point. So through my own play, Mythic plus raids, whatever the case may be, as well as other streamers, YouTube videos, and the Discord for warriors as well, you've sort of got all this sort of general consensus. So that's what will give you guys a firm foundation to have a look at the builds together with the protection for both raid and single target based, as well as a Mythic plus more AoE based build. And yeah, it gives you guys a very firm foundation of where to begin your warrior journey as a protection, and then you'll make your tweaks there based on the encounter or personal preference, whatever the case may be. Now, how it stacks up compared to the other tanks, honestly, warriors are looking very, very good. I would say maybe blood DK might out it. It's just its healing. There's certain scenarios where I actually don't think blood DK is better, but in certain scenarios there are crazy things like the self-healing from a blood DK can look, you know, it just looks insane when they're solid the last 20% of the boss's health or things like that. But in typical play, I'd actually say protection warrior is still looking very solid compared to most of the tanks. The only one that I would pitch comfortably above Prot warrior at this point is the Vengeance Demon Hunter. They're looking very, very powerful. So yeah, there you go. Now, the build itself, the first one we're going to be checking out is the raid / single target based one. 90%, more like 80%, you get roughly in that realm of the build, and its pathing is going to be pretty bog standard across the board. But I will point out a few key things just to at least keep in mind. Now, you have Inspiring Presence, super powerful, very imperative in terms of Shadowlands and what the current iteration of it is through the conduits. Pointless in Dragonflight. Honestly, no warrior should ever, even DPS warriors for that matter. There's better points to be spent elsewhere, and Inspiring Presence nerfed down to the 5% max health increase, really not worth it. And the duration, it was never really about the duration. It was less to do with providing a DPS raid cooldown for attrition based scenarios where you just want it over a longer period of time. It was more so to do with just a front load of a particular AoE raid mechanic or something like that. Some sort of front load damage that you then needed to mitigate and give healers time to top you guys back up. It was never about the duration, typically. Spell Reflection is another one that I want to touch base on. We are entering a heavily elemental themed raid and first season for Dragonflight, so a lot of magic damage is going to be flying around the place, and Spell Reflection now obviously reduces the magic damage taken by 20% for 5 seconds. So even DPS warriors, Spell Reflection is going to be a very, very key component of just helping reduce that damage down. We don't have to argue and fight over impending victory anymore. That's going to be a comfortable pickup each and every time, which is just gives us even more healing. Honestly, we have a lot of those sort of 20 to 30 second cooldowns that we didn't get to synergize before, whereas now we get the beautiful plethora of all the new goodies to play with. So looking at the core component pushing down, you'll notice that a lot of this side is picked up on Mythic Plus, which we'll touch later, but it's got your 3 AoE primary talents here and then 2 stuns. The Stormbolt and Shockwave obviously not needed in a single target raid environment, so that's sort of pointless. That gives us all these extra points to play around with. That one, we need to spend on something to allow us to get down to the bottom tier, and more importantly, 2 less impactful skills are picked up, but still they're worth pointing out. So Pain and Gain, Hone Reflex is really good. Cooldown on Shield Slam is always helpful, especially given that bread and butter of the typical play, but this isn't the be all and end all because of the fact that we get Shield Slam procs from strategists. We'll touch on the specialization side, but so these are the less impactful ones that you're just putting in for the sake of putting in points, honestly. Bounding Stride is another example there. We have the beautiful Thunderclap into Blood and Thunder. That's beautiful playstyles back, baby. I love it. And they've also changed that rend does not need to be applied to your primary target, and then you spread it with Thunderclap, it just immediately Thunderclaps everything, right? It's pretty well spoken about the moment that change came in, probably about a week or 2 ago now. As soon as that was announced, every warrior in the world basically rejoiced. It was a really cool change. As for down the guts of the left-hand column, you're picking up more shield slam damage, extra armor, extra strength based on your armor, so they synergize nicely as well. Picking up Avatar, every single build in the world is running Avatar at the moment, and picking up the Unstoppable Force. Now this capstone modifier with the choice node, this is the bad boy that allows for, it basically turns your cooldowns avatar into the playstyle of just revenge, thunderclap, revenge, thunderclap. Like it's literally just each revolving GCD, you're doing the opposite one. And this is going to be your pickup for the modifier there. As for the central column, like I said, we already get Blood and Thunder, double time, pretty bog standard in terms of what it's going to provide. We do like bleeds, so we'll explain how they synergize nicely with everything else. But we'll go down into picking up Thunderous Roar because that is the bleed. So that capstone will have both modifiers picked up, which is extra duration as well as extra bleed damage, and then the shorter cooldown as well, which all synergizes nicely. Now, one-handed weapon specialization, this could technically be flexed if you really needed certain different changes, but typically you're actually always going to leave that as is because it gives you the nice flat 5% damage, but also 5% leech as well, which is handy. Combine that with your it is 5% leech up top, so that's 10% leech all told. Yummy, awesome, extra healing here and there. This Cruel Strikes point is 110% though, the flex pick date. If you needed it, if a certain raid encounter has AoE mobs that are spawning and you're struggling to pick them up for whatever reason, you could put it in Titanic Throw. If you needed Intervene, whatever, you could put it into Intervene. Bitter Immunity for more defensive capabilities, you've got that flexible talent through Cool Strikes. But then in terms of wherever you need it from there, Cool Strikes will probably give you the most bang for your buck in terms of single target. Because again, we are sort of focusing just on single target. As for the specialization side, again, standard pickups, we're getting Demoralizing Shout. Since its inception, I'm pretty sure the passive Devastator has always been picked up, if not 90% of the time since its existence. So no actual castable ability through Devastate. You always pick up Devastator for the passive. Yes, you're getting Revenge because you have to anyway. Last Stand, pretty standard defensive cooldown. We go down for Brace for Impact into, on the right hand column, getting Brutal Vitality. Very powerful, although it might seem as if you want more single target survivability through passive healing. Fueled by Violence doesn't really pack too much of a punch, honestly, whereas the benefit you get from Brutal Vitality, 30% of damage done adds to your active Ignore Pain, is huge. Definitely don't underestimate that. That'll be a standard pickup no matter where you go, honestly. Until they change it, that's really powerful. Picking up the Tough as Nails, again, you do have the option of flexing it into the choice node with spell block. If you really have a situation where you want to be blocking spells, certain encounters might have a particular ability that is just particularly nasty as a tank, and then you've got that option of throwing it in there. Otherwise, typically you'd be running Tough as Nails for that. And lastly, another choice node into Punish. Now, Punish is really handy because it gives you more damage reduction as well. But if you're thinking more selfish, you have the option of going into Juggernaut to really pad the meters and try and pass as a Prot Warrior to get you rank 1 Prot Warrior damage, which could be a thing, who knows. And then finally, on the right hand column, we do go into Ravenger by pathing through the central column here. But Ravenger in a single target environment, honestly, it does a lot of damage and it's definitely useful, but this could technically be flexed into perhaps if you really needed more survivability, you've got Enduring Alacrity, or you could go into Battle Scarred Veteran. I really don't like Battle Scarred Veteran, but we'll touch on why in a bit there. The left-hand column, we're going down into Best Served Cold, pick up Challenging Shout. 1, it's useful, but 2, it's just mandatory. We need a path down somehow. This is a great choice node. You could pick up Show of Force. This will directly tie into that Avatar and Unstoppable Force gameplay, that loop that I mentioned. So that's where you just Revenge increases Thunderclap. So you just go Revenge, Thunderclap, Revenge, Thunderclap. That could be picked up. But purely single target, sudden death will outpace the Show of Force. So keeping that in mind, yeah, you obviously put a lot of points in if you're going selfish mode and if you are looking strictly single target, because some encounters simply don't have any adds to deal with. So that's something to factor in. Then sudden death's the way you go from there. Now, the next choice mode down, Into the Fray versus Heavy Repercussions. Into the Fray obviously does provide better attack speed with the haste and everything, and that leads into more Devastator procs, more Strategist procs for the Shield Slam. You get the idea, but honestly, Rage is not an issue, and the extra damage you get from it, honestly, Heavy Repercussions is still well and truly worth it. You get the Rage gen from Shield Slam, but it's more to do with the fact that you're increasing your shield block duration. Shield block uptime is obviously going to be super imperative for, you know, what you are as a Prot Warrior, so anything that increases that, Heavy Repercussions definitely carries its weight in gold when it comes to shield block uptime and things like that. Pathing down, we get our new goodie called Shield Charge. So this will play directly into the capstone modifier of Champion's Bulwark. And Champion's Bulwark is the new Reprisal. So in current Shadowlands, we have the Reprisal Legendary, and that's what gives all your charge and intervene and stuff like that. The proc where it gives you shield block and revenge and generates rage. And just like this, you can see it does all that as well, increases the damage for shield charge as well. But more importantly, yeah, it provides shield block. So this is another avenue of getting shield block up, as well as provides the free revenge and generates some rage there. So further proof that rage is really no issue, and that synergizes nicely in terms of a single target. Also getting the other modifier of battering ram, which increases the shield charge damage and crit damage and crit chance, as well as increases your auto attack and attack speed for a period of time as well. So shield charge actually turns into a bit of a beast when it comes to just a general 45-second damage output. Generates rage, like it's just amazing all around. There's a lot of rage gen and a lot of nice damage from there. Now finally, as we push down through the central column here, Blood Surge, this is a very integral part of how your rage generation does so well. We have bleeds from Rend, we have bleeds from Thunderous Roar, we have bleeds from Deep Wounds, which is, although we don't pick up Heroic Throw, because why the hell would we? This is throwaway talent, honestly. We get more than enough Deep Wounds uptime through Devastator and Revengers. So that's how Protection Warrior provides Deep Wounds outside of anything else. Honestly, they're the only two options. And every time one of those 3 bleeds is ticking, you've got your chance to increase your rage from Blood Surge. So very powerful. Another typical standard damage mitigating cooldown, Shield Wall, awesome. Across the board, you get all 3 of these. Now, you might sound like you want to run Unbreakable Will when you read it, because it gives you an extra charge, which is really powerful, but also it gives the 50% reduction to your party members. Unfortunately, the downside is that does say party members. So in a raid environment, when there's 25 people, 20 people, 30 people, if you're flexing right up to the maximum on Heroic or something like that, it really doesn't have too much bang for your buck. So because of that, that's why we don't really bother with Unbreakable Will and Penetrable Wall, where you're getting more uptime on your shield wall by reducing its cooldown. That's your go-to for there. Again, selfish mode on the left-hand side, you could pick up Massacre and pass the shit out of a Prot Warrior. Go for rank 1, baby. But no, we want shield block uptime, so Enduring Defenses is the way to go there. Pathing down through shield spec and then picking up Indomitable, just a healthy, good all-around talent that helps with survivability. Violent Outburst, which is a rendition of our current tier set, which works very well as well. And then picking up Booming Voice, another perfect example of how our rage generation manages to be so good. Now, the Battle Scarred Veteran, this is well and truly up for debate, but I really don't like it, honestly. The cooldown just kept getting increase because it is so powerful of an ability. But now at 3 minutes, where you don't get to decide when it procs, the 30% threshold of health honestly feels really bad. It typically 99% of the time always procs whenever an inopportune time is present, like it's proccing when you don't want it to, basically. And honestly, yeah, everyone else on the Discord, for example, seems to tend to agree. Bit of a kind of shitty talent. Basically, they can't have the cooldown be too low. Sorry, not the cooldown. They can't have the health threshold be too low. So if it was something dumb like 5%, then whenever it does proc, like you kind of almost shit out of luck anyway, because you're so low health that the damage reduction isn't going to provide too much gain. But then if it's too high, like I think 30% is too high, it's going to be proccing just as a part of your typical front load of taking damage and being healed, taking damage and being healed. That it's just proccing at the wrong times, basically. So they either need to reduce the cooldown again or increase. They either need to make it a shorter cooldown, so yeah, reduce the cooldown, or reduce the health threshold to make it maybe 25 or 20%. 30 is probably a bit too high. But again, I don't know 100% what I'm talking about, just my general consensus of how it feels. And yeah, then that's what your Ravager pick could be flexed into if you needed more survivability. Otherwise, Ravager as a DPS pickup is just all around a good talent, honestly, to pick up from there. And that's your single target. So now on the flip side, let's check out a Mythic Plus Prot build. You'll notice that there are about 80% of basically the same talents, right? And then there's a few tweaks from there. So you'll notice that these 3 pillars of average merc talents that we have to spend points on will now be funneled into picking up the Stormbolt. Very powerful for a Mythic Plus AoE environment. You want to be stunning those key targets that do a lot of damage or have a key ability that just gets shit on basically. It's very, yeah, there's a lot of them in Mythic Plus, especially with testing. It's a new season, it's a new expansion, there's a lot of different changes. You want to be providing as much lockdown on mobs that you can until we sort of get a bit more familiar with what does bad thing and what key interrupts are going to be used for. You have your AoE talents that you want to be picking up for increased revenge damage, barbaric training, and seismic reverberation in particular. And then you path down to pick up shockwave as well. Now, you'll see we've dropped 1 point from overwhelming range to help facilitate these changes. The straight down the guts pathing for Avatar is the same that you will see. You still have the opportunity of running Unstoppable Force, and honestly, typically you might also be picking that up because that's just far superior damage output. However, we are going to be picking up Immovable Object. This is what provides Avatar with Shield Wall, and then when you pop Shield Wall you also get Avatar as well, and we'll touch on why with synergies over on the Specialization tree for this particular build. Picking up Thunderous Roar, as always, we already know that synergizes really well with Blood Surge, but Thunderous Words is the only capstone modifier we pick up. We forego the Uproar. Outside of that, everything else is pretty much the same. We're picking up Blood and Thunder from there. We have the opportunity of maybe going Uproar, but I really do enjoy running Titanic Throw in an AoE Mythic Plus environment of people running into mobs or just helping group up everything as you need to. I like running it, but it can be flexed into Bitter Immunity if you needed it. You can pick up Sidearm if you want the extra passive AoE cleave from that, or you can pick up Uproar. That's more of a flexible pick for sure. As for the Specialization side, again, standard pickups pretty much right down the center of it. You'll actually notice that this central column is literally identical. However, we have made one key change in that we push into Unbreakable Will. That is also why I have run Immovable Object, where it procs the other one. You'll notice that with Unbreakable Will, it gives the extra Shield Wall charge. So you actually get 2 charges of Shield Wall, plus a third by virtue of the fact that Avatar also pops Shield Wall. And each one of those charges is going to be pumping out 20% damage reduction to your party. In a Mythic Plus environment, this is very, very powerful for sure. So I very much like picking that up. However, if you aren't going to run the Immovable Object, you could still run Unbreakable Will by all means, and then still get the damage output through Unstoppable Force by all means. That's definitely doable. But that's the only key component change from there. You still pick up your Violent Outburst and Booming Voice and all that jazz from there. Left column, literally identical. However, we pull out of Battering Ram and pick up the Thunderlord. That's definitely well worth it for the AoE necessity in a Mythic Plus environment. And the right hand column, everything else is identical from there. And this is where I would argue not to flex out of Ravenger. Ravenger very much is quite powerful, and honestly the pickup of choice for sure. No reason not to get it. It's just going to help your damage output and help picking up ads. Even if you've got AoE ads that aren't coming in and you need to generate threat on them, then it can be done at range. You can do your full cooldown and full rotation basically while that's ticking away. So Ravager is definitely far more imperative in a Mythic Plus build environment. And yeah, that's pretty much how protection is looking, and these builds will be linked down in the description below, so that way you can just have a direct link straight to the actual builds themselves. I have a toy around with it. You can see there's definitely a few moments of personal preference that will play a part in this, but this will give you an exceptionally solid foundation of where to start. And yeah, you can make your tweaks from there. Thanks very much for watching, and over the next few days, our next videos will be based around the pre-patch builds. So we're going to have one video that encompasses a nice starting point for all 3 warrior specs and how it's going to look at level 60 and level 70, because that is obviously 5 points on either side of the tree that we don't get straight away. And so we'll have a look at those builds in that video. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.